Thank you. And thank you all for joining. I'm really excited to walk through this presentation with you all. I know it's extremely important, right? As we think about the next stage of life. I feel like figuring out what my major would be was, such a daunting task. And then the next step was, oh, I have to get a job after I graduate. So how do I tackle this? Um, so I do work with tons of students on trying to navigate, this job search process. I wanted to first set the stage with understanding where you all are in your own current process, or what might be of most interest for you, so that I could focus on those areas. I'm just going to go around. And part of me, can, on the pronunciation of names, you can help me out. But Liao Wang, maybe you could talk to me about if you have already established your major or share it with a group, and then also your job search, if you started an internship search, or maybe your full-time job search.
So hi, I'm Le Yao Wang, and sorry about the voice because I'm in the library, so I have to keep my voice down. And so I'm second year econ major and considering double major in computer science. So I'm just starting my internship search. I'm not so sure whether I can get one for my summer or not, but anyway, just starting, and I think it's a nice time to start.
Great. Always a great time to start, so I'll tell you that. Samantha, maybe you could talk to us a little, share the same info.
Hi there, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm actually relatively on a similar track. I'm also planning on majoring in econ with a computer science minor. And then I'm also planning to double major in environmental thought practice. So I started my internship search. I'm ideally trying to find something that's maybe like remote. And I've just started thinking about doing something with green computing or like clean tech, and like software in that space.
Okay, great. Albert?
Sure. I'm Albert. I'm currently a third year, majoring in economics and statistics. I'm currently pursuing a career in finance, and I'm also looking for an internship in 2024 summer. I have been rolling on this internship search process for a very long time. I think last semester my primary focus was on consulting, but I think consulting was having a really hard time, so I didn't actually get an offer that I want. So definitely would like to learn more from you and what you can offer for us in terms of better navigate on an internship. Thank you.
Okay. And Jenna?
Hi, I'm a similar track as everyone else. I'm a second year student at UVA, majoring in economics. And then I hope to minor in mathematics as well. And I have like started my internship process and resume building and things like that. So
Okay. So it seems where a lot of us outside of Albert, right? Albert's had a little bit of a head start here. We'll talk about sort of that initial thought process and walk you through, deciding on, how do I think about what I want to do? Where do I look for these jobs? If I get an interview, how do I prep for that interview, following up on an interview, and then ultimately an offer. So I think this will be really information. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for everyone. Okay. All right. So unlock your career potential, a roadmap for your job search. And so pardon, this one's a little fuzzy, but a lot of you have talked to me about your major. And I think that there is sometimes a misconception that your major is this huge determining factor on what your future career path will look like. For example, myself, I was an English major. I thought I ultimately was going to go to law school. I ended up on Wall Street, literally here in New York, working for Deutsche Bank, doing rotations between their compliance group and then their private wealth management business. So totally different track. And now I've done HR specifically focused on talent acquisition and recruiting and hiring for the financial services industry. So I always highlight that, as you think about what you're looking to do, it doesn't necessarily need to correlate exactly to what your major is today. You want to start thinking about, what you're passionate about, what you're interested in. And there's a couple of different ways to do this, right? Self-assessment, which I think is very important, right? There's a lot of, we can always look around and see what others are doing, but really sort of that internal reflection on what your personal qualities, what your skill sets, your attributes, things that set you apart. And that will also help you tremendously in the application process, right? So you're not going out to look exactly like someone else or sort of a mirror copy of what you think an employer might be looking for. You really want to highlight sort of that authenticity about yourself and what you bring to the table. So there's trends there from a soft skills perspective. And then obviously, from technical skills, I'm hearing we're coupling, econ backgrounds with some technical type of backgrounds, which I think is great. And then your interests as well, what you're passionate about, your hobbies. So these are all things I always ask, you can sit down and map it out and on a piece of paper and think about, what excites me. It's really important, right? When you get into a job, in order for you to thrive and be really successful and to perform really well, you really want to maximize your ability and your potential to do so based on what your own particular interests are. Setting clear career goals and objectives. A lot of times I hear candidates, right? I recruit for a ton of financial services companies say, I just want to work in a bank, or I just want to work for this particular company. I heard it's a great place, right? And that's great. You can envision this ideal career path, but also, work towards being a bit clearer on what some of those objectives are and how to align those, right, with some of your values and principles. And it'll come out in your interview as well, right? So when you're interviewing, why do you want this role? It's not necessarily, oh, I heard it's a really great company, or they're the #1 investment bank, or we make a ton of money, right? Sometimes those, but really be clear on that, the sort of that specific vision that you have. Hiring managers are drawn to candidates that are truly, being intentional about the types of positions that they're applying to or the companies and the roles. Exploring different career paths related to your field of study, right? And there are going to be a ton. When you think about economics, it's not just one sort of lane that you're going to be going down in order to advance throughout your career. There's so many different areas and different sectors within that field. So I would always say is really educate yourself on those, right? The different roles and specializations, within a certain industry. Career exploration, you could be doing a ton of things now, right, before you go into a full-time job position after graduation. Informational interviews. I can't stress informational interviews enough to connect with individuals and gain some of their insights into their roles and their experiences, right? And what does that mean? If there's a particular type of position that you've been interested in, you could, and I'm going to go into this in a bit more detail, right? The tactics on how do you connect with different professionals in the field. But just stressing an informational interview is a way for you to say, listen, I'm exploring these opportunities given your position, or given your career path, or given your expertise within this area. It'd be great to understand and gain insights about, for someone such as myself that is pursuing a career in this particular industry or type of company. It's to have someone that's experienced and in the seat already is going to give you, I think, a really good competitive edge versus you to just sit back and think and try to create, okay, I think this is what I want to do. It sounds like, it might be this type of a role, or it sounds like these are the expectations or responsibilities. Talking to a professional definitely will get you there. And beyond sort of that education from a professional, internships and volunteering. So Albert, I think it was you, right? You're pursuing sort of these internships and recognizing the importance of that hands-on experience. Sometimes I'll tell you, I did an internship when I first graduated. It was at Deutsche Bank, but I did a rotation in, I believe it was like an operations team or something around the end. I said, or it was like cash management. I'm like, this is not what I want to do. And it gave me insights, not just to the work itself, but the people, the culture, the energy, right? You know, within even a particular company or bank, depending on where you sit, the accounting team could have a different type of internal culture, right? Or type of, you know, performance type of expectation versus another group. So internships or volunteering. Now, if you cannot secure an internship, I always recommend trying to find some sort of opportunity to volunteer, even if it's, you know, 10 to 20 hours a week or so, just to at least get that exposure. And employers, prospective employers really do value that. Right. This shows that you're really driven and motivated to get that exposure, even if it's not a dedicated internship program where you're getting paid, you're really volunteering your time to benefit yourself. Now, you have to make your resume count. I have recruited for over 20 years, and I can tell you, especially for junior level talent, right? Those that are applying to internships or coming directly out of undergrad, I could post a role and within 24 to 48 hours receive over 300 applicants. And so it is now I have to go through and scan, or my recruiting team, right, to see which candidate is going to stick out, you know, which candidate makes sense for us to advance to the next stage. And it's very quick, right? You know, as this mentions, it's for like a 7 seconds glimpse, right? So this is your, you know, as I say, your elevator pitch on paper, right? You're in the elevator and someone tell me about yourself. We've got 3 floors to get through. And when I get off, I want to be impressed, right? So really make your resume count. That is that first introduction in the event that you're not, you know, secure, you know, applying to a job through a direct network, or you haven't met the individual hiring manager, right? This is you really going into a queue of tons of other applications. So creating a standout resume. I keep it concise, and I want to emphasize this, aging for a 1-page resume, because you guys are great. I'm sure there's so much that you could share as far as, you know, what type of coursework that you're doing, or different accomplishments, your hobbies and different interests. But keeping it concise, especially at your level of experience, you know, is something that will help the recruiter to quickly gain this glimpse into what your background looks like, what your interests are, what you're studying, and highlight some of your differentiating factors about your application. We don't want to get too fancy with the font, and this is for 2 reasons. It's an easier read, but also applicant tracking systems are typically where your resume is going to go through. And it flows a bit much easier, and it's easier to read, to go into the system from a recruiting standpoint, or when a recruiter is searching through an applicant tracking system to find a candidate, if you have the consistent font that the system is trained to use. And across the board, I've worked with many of them. Usually it's Arial, Calibri, or Times New Roman, right? So we don't want to get, you know, something that's just too, you know, I know everyone wants to be creative, but it actually will not benefit you when trying to get your resume highlighted or viewed through a system. It actually comes out pretty, I've seen some, and it comes out pretty messy, you know, honestly, with some applicants that have applied with different fonts, and it'll come through the system and it's a blur, and I don't even bother reading it. So that's just a tip. Proofreading, eliminate any grammatical errors or typos, right? This goes without saying, but trust me, there are so many candidates that get really excited. They finish their resume and there's a couple of grammatical errors or typos in there. Always ask for feedback. So even if you think your resume is great, I would rely on a career services office, you know, individual, or someone, you know, in your network, just a second pair of eyes to review that resume, to help you to create something to just really kind of stand out and ensure it's polished. So, you know, resumes, this is a long list, right? I think and just to be clear, everyone has a resume by now, hopefully, right? If anyone doesn't, maybe they could just wave a hand or just quickly say, no, I haven't. So the general template of what it should look like and what it consists of here, right? You have your heading, which is going to be your personal information, contact information, a little bit on your education, a little bit on your experience, right? And if you don't have any formal work experience, right, dig deep. Right. Think about some of that volunteer experience that you could put in, maybe some work that you've done, with a family member and a certain type of business that could highlight some type of skills. I know that that's always a challenge for some. Does anyone here, have you never had some type of role formally before and looking for something to put on your resume? You can chime in at any time, but yes, I would definitely say, anything, internships, part-time jobs, volunteer work, anything that can highlight some of your skill sets and qualifications for this role. Now, also, let's be clear, we want to make sure that it could be extremely targeted and related to the opportunity that you are applying to. I know the easiest thing to do is to create a generalist resume. However, I certainly suggest 100% of the time, especially for talent, that is looking for internships or first-time jobs, to really try to relate whatever that you put in that experience section to a role, responsibility, or qualification that you see on the actual job description. Skills, right? So just that, that are relevant to that, whether it's, language skills, you're speaking different languages, any certifications, things like that, projects. This is optional, but I really do like to see certain projects listed, especially if it's relevant to a role, right? You worked on some sort of case study and you created or was able to execute something from start to finish and design, some sort of project. And maybe the role responsibility will be looking for someone, right, that can really be extremely detail oriented, design something from start to finish, manage it. So think through some of that. Extracurricular activities, and if you don't have any, I would say try to, and I know that's always difficult, be heads down, but it is a really huge key differentiator, right? I've seen candidates that have stellar GPAs with no extracurricular activities, get passed for certain roles because the hiring manager may say, oh, they sound really smart and heads down, but we need someone that more collaborative, right? We have a lot of team exercises here. I want to see something else that they're doing to really try to, encourage me that if they do join our team or this particular function, they'll be set up for success, not just this individual contributor sitting off to the side. And honors and award, if you have any, right? That's not sort of a necessity, but of course, if you have any. I'm going to stop for a second on the resume section because I know that gets tricky. Does anyone have any questions on your resume section, or your own resume? Is there something that you're hung up on, or maybe you want to ask my advice on specifically that you've included that you're not sure if you should keep it or not, or that might be missing? Okay, great. So it sounds like we all have our resumes. We're kind of ready to go. And again, this is just kind of a recap of what I mentioned on those like ATS systems. Another thing is, completing every field in an online application. There's some applications that ask a ton of questions. As an individual that has specifically designed ATS systems, right? So I have been the person to go in and say, what questions do we want to ask a candidate? They are 9 times out of 10 intentional. So they're helping us to kind of go beyond that screen of the resume, but get to know you. So I would say really take that time out to enter that information as detailed or, as accurately as possible. Writing an effective cover letter. This is always a tricky one as well. I don't know if anyone wants to raise their hand if they have attempted to write a cover letter and had some challenges there, or have a specific, overall question, on cover letters. Okay. So what I will say is a cover letter is also that introduction that you want to be extremely targeted and tailored to the opportunity. I know you're applying for tons of roles, and sometimes you just want to make a general cover letter. I'm a really great person, hire me. These are the things that I do. But again, companies want to ensure that you're really being intentional and thoughtful about these opportunities that you're applying to, especially at your stage in your career, right? So I've put in here what you should have, right? It's a good way for you to elaborate on your experience and your skills and why you're a great fit. And so you can have a general cover letter template that includes that information. But outside of that, you want to make sure you're showing off your knowledge of the company, right? I recently came across this, I following up on my recent application, I'm currently studying this, or I'm focused on this particular area. I recognize that's a huge business initiative that you're focused on, or I recognize this is an industry that the company is has been able to grow rapidly over the last couple of years, so something to that matter. You can always get a lot of knowledge from company, I'll say news, believe it or not, too, right? I'll sometimes type in a name of a company and look at recent news, right? And you'll be able to kind of quickly scan and see what's going on there. And I think that's a huge competitive edge. When I interview candidates and they're like, yeah, you just acquired that company that focuses on the oil industry, right? And it's really exciting to me. I actually interned with like an oil and gas company, 2 years ago, or my dad works for an oil and gas company, something of the sort, right? But something relatable. So Google, quick search, news, company name, and then we're all great at Boolean searches, I hope, right? You can put some other keyword in there and see. And then when all else fails, you could always look at, hiring and things on their career page, right? To understand something specific on the company. So every company is going to have a page on their culture. It's going to have a page on their careers page. You'll get to see stories of other individuals, usually, right? They work there, they're saying a story, they're explaining why they like the company, and you can use some of that content. Companies do spend a lot of time and effort on their websites. So to have students, take a look at it and do some research, speaks volumes as well. And this should be one page as well. So, and then, you don't have to be over extravagant. I have a bullet point here on what cover letter should not. It says, there's no task I can't accomplish, right? And so it's a great mindset to have, but not necessarily something that you would include in a cover letter, right? We want people that at the end of the day, we're still human. We know that while there is probably no task that you want to take them all on, we obviously know that there's going to be learning curves for everything that you do, especially coming out of undergrad. So this is just a bit more detail, right? The purpose of it, a personalized introduction of yourself, showcasing your enthusiasm, highlighting your fit, why you're fit for the role, connect some of your experiences to that role, and the general interest. And that's going to be general interest into specific role, but then also the overall company, and outside of just that position that you're going to be applying for. The structure, I always say you've got your header, right? So similar to your resume, some of that information, but it's going to be a bit more limited, right? On your contact information, your salutation. If you know the name of the hiring manager, you can put that in. A lot of times we don't. So, you can put dear hiring manager. I oftentimes say dear hiring team. And I think either one of those will suffice. A brief introduction, why the position you're applying for, your enthusiasm for the opportunity, and then your body paragraphs, right? So I think these body paragraphs is also really helpful, right? Because sometimes you have a lot to say, and it's how do I really structure this? Introduce yourself briefly, mention the position. That's first paragraph. That middle paragraph is where you're going to highlight those skills, connect your qualification to the job requirements, and then your last paragraph is really that expression of interest for the interview and for thanking the employer for their consideration. And in closing, some say sincerely, regards, best regards, any of those will work. But if you just, we'll send this out afterwards. If you want to take a sort of screenshot on how do I actually write this cover letter, the first, middle, and final paragraph, I think is really helpful to kind of structure ideas in that one page. Oh, this is just sort of more on, the cover letter, the last, it goes without saying proofread. So I'm going to toggle back and forth with some of these, job search and internship search strategies, right? So now we're all set up. We've got our resume, we've got our, we saw the job, we've got this cover letter, but also just in general, how am I looking for these jobs, finding information? So the job search platform and websites, I'm going to go to this next and I'm taking a look. If any of you use any of these websites, I'm going to highlight one that hopefully we all are on from a professional standpoint. Is it's really easy. Jobs are posted on LinkedIn, Handshake for sure, right? So of course Handshake, but is everyone here on LinkedIn, or do they have a LinkedIn page? Okay, perfect. And I'm just curious, does everyone have a picture on their LinkedIn page? You can wave your hand or unmute if you like. I think a picture is always important too, right? The digital footprints are going a long way. There are tons of searches that are done. So I know that some social media sites we're often on, but, spending your time on your professional digital footprint, employers are posting roles on these websites, ensuring that the resume you have on this particular website is pretty clear, up to date. And then also as well, just anything that you can highlight from your experiences. There's also ways where individuals can give you references or give you feedback on your LinkedIn page. So having visibility to that as well, I think is great. Earlier on, Jennifer did put a link to my LinkedIn page so we can all connect. I'll look forward to connection invitations after this for sure. And it's a small group, so I'm more than happy to take a look at your LinkedIn profile and give you some quick feedback or guidance or advice on that. But there are all these online platforms where jobs are being posted, where you can apply directly for jobs, or recruiters are looking through the profiles that applicants have added there to find candidates, right? So it's a two-way street. While you're also applying, you want to make sure that you have visibility and really polished and clear profile or resumes updated on these sites, that if I as a recruiter am looking to fill a role, I can kind of do a quick word search or keyword search or interest search and find candidates and reach out to you. Networking. So I always say networking is not just about getting the job. It's about building relationships. And these relationships are not just about the here and now. I have folks that I have networked with probably at the beginning of my career that I could call today, and they can give me, connect me to certain, business prospects. They may know someone that knows someone at a potential company. So, it really, really goes a long way. Networking, I know, is always challenging for some, right? It's you just kind of think, oh, I have to go up to a stranger and introduce myself. So I always say start in the rooms that will be most comfortable for you, right? So whether it's something on ground, right, a career fair, an alumni event, alumni events are awesome, or just alumni in general, right? To reach out to someone on LinkedIn or an email and say, look, I'm a fellow Wahoo, or currently attending UVA. I came across your information and really would like to chat with you, get some guidance about this particular industry or role. A lot of times, and granted, sometimes they are busy, but a lot of times they will be open to chatting with you and giving you some brief advice, or at least, if not them, pointing you in the right direction on where you can get some of that. We touched upon that LinkedIn profile, informational interviews, and attending industry events on grounds. I'm sure you have, for example, industry events or something like this, right? This doesn't seem like it's networking, but it is to a certain extent. I'll connect with some of you on LinkedIn. I'll be able to look at some of your interests, and I could, ping you and send you some information. But engaging with different industry professionals or just peers in an industry, I think is a great way to navigate that job search. They can tell you a lot more about a company or a role or responsibilities or the day-to-day, right? Sometimes you really just want to understand, like, what do I do from 9 to 5, in this job? What is my expectation? And even something, as simple as that, and hearing from someone, look, when you get in the mornings, typically we have a team meeting, then the expectation is you'll be at your desk, we'll be looking for you to produce this type of work, or, we'll be looking for you to execute this type of activity. So things like that, no question, I think, especially when it comes to networking, when you're beginning your job search or starting your career, I think is that any individual or professional would look at as something too small or too simple, right, to ask. Everything, I think, is a learning opportunity. I just go back here. So we talked about, these job search and platforms, tapping into college career services. Jen can talk to you about that. It's there, it's on campus. There's been, just years and years of work and different, intelligence that's gone into all of the resources that are available there. So I always say, make sure you're tapping in there and then utilizing the alumni networks, which if you go on to the UVA career site, there's different ways that they can direct you to tap into alumni networks. So this is something quickly that you guys, we'll share this afterwards, right? So just a little bit of a checklist that you can use, right, when you're preparing, to get everything cleaned up, your resume, using LinkedIn, doing your research, networking, job search websites. So I think it's a really great way to just keep you organized. And also just accountable to yourself, right? Did I do this already? Okay, great. Let me make sure I go back and review this piece. Oh, you know what? Maybe I didn't, reach out to this particular contact. So a job search is very much a strategy, right? It's not sort of this isolated, I apply to something and hope that something happens, right? Developing an overall strategy will really help you be most successful in the job search. So everything that I'm explaining here, really understanding that each step and stage is just as important as the next. So getting an interview, apply, hope, and wait. Is that what we should do? Right. But I emphasize just now this strategy, right? To research, target, network, really to maximize our ability to secure this interview. So it's not just tons and tons of applications. I've heard candidates say, oh, I applied to 50 jobs, I didn't get any response. Right. But I'm giving you a lot of sort of tips on how you can maximize those applications by going above and beyond. And I will tell you, while yes, there's tons of volumes of other candidates that do go above and beyond, there are a lot that just sit back and keep their fingers crossed, all right? And those are the ones that may get overlooked. So don't be afraid, to really maximize that strategy by utilizing different avenues and resources in order for you to get visibility for your application. And so, more detailed company research, we talked about that, whether it's Google News, looking at a company's website, the STAR behavioral answers, those are also readily available in your career services office. You can have examples of types of questions asked, so you can be prepared. I know that that's always something that a ton of candidates say, how do I prepare? What will they ask me? And then, just case interview practice. You can also find some of that information on the career websites that I mentioned previously. They'll typically have different blogs or resources that college students can utilize. So types of interviews I want to emphasize is phone, video, and in person. I can appreciate, those that are able to get on camera, right, and get a bit comfortable. During, COVID, I will say that it was very difficult to try to navigate some of these interviews because you, candidates were used to being in person in front of someone, and now they're just on a screen, right? So reading body language, even responding, it was a totally different structure that a lot of candidates were not used to. And a lot of companies still are relying on video. So, there's pros and cons to it, but I will say for college students, I think that it's such a positive, sort of a great pro, because you don't have to be in person to talk to someone in another state, right? You're on video, you can present yourself professionally just as if you were in the room without that travel. So it gives you can maximize some opportunities to interview with organizations versus, once upon a time when I was interviewing, I had to figure out how I was getting to a certain location. So, I was pretty much tied to New York at that time because I'm gonna do it when I go home, or I have family there, right, where I can interview and stay. Follow up after an interview. So you have done all this upfront work to get an interview, made this great resume, very thoughtful about your cover letter. You started to network with folks, do your research on the company, you get called in, you prepare for your interview, studying some of the questions, or prepping yourself for some of the questions that may be asked of you, and now you're done. I have hiring managers that will actually turn down candidates that don't follow up, right? They just have this mindset. It's a courtesy. So not everyone has that mindset, but I will say just courtesy to follow up and really say, I'm serious. I really appreciated meeting with you, and I want to be considered, for this position and ultimately hired for this role. You want to stay, that the appreciation and opportunity to interview is there. Reinforce your interest in the position, for sure, right? And you should have had the opportunity now during your interview to learn a bit more about this role. And I'm going to kind of step back for a second. During your interview, please always go prepared with some question to ask, some thoughtful question, because that is always the question at the end of the interview. Do you have any questions for me? And it shows that you are thinking forward, and you're really intently about what this opportunity is that you're applying to. So please do, as much as you can, try to think of one question for a particular interviewer. But I say that all highlight is now that you can tie that into your follow-up interview. It was really great to learn about those growth objectives that we talked about. It was really great to learn about the team expansion. You mentioned that you're looking for someone with a technical background. My computer science or my engineering background can actually lend to that. That's why I've taken that on as my minor, or my second major. So things like that. Emphasizing how your skills align with the role and the company needs. And, just keep yourself in the interviewer's thoughts. So there's always going to be something in that interview that I think is going to be very specific to you, right? Maybe you mentioned, they saw a hobby and said, wow, like, that's something I always did as a child, or wow, you're from here. I grew up there, right? So make sure that it's meaningful. But I think walking away and being able to send this follow-up message where they're like, I definitely remember Samantha, right? I definitely remember Jenna. Like, I've had so many interviews today, but this stuck out, and she reminded me who she was in this, in this email and this follow-up. So just a little bit of an outline for what that follow-up email, right? A concise subject line, a greeting by this time versus the cover letter, right, where it's dear hiring manager, right? We don't always know who it is. You should know the individual now by name that you've met with, right? expressing that gratitude, reiterating that interest, highlighting your fit, your confidence, and being able to contribute to the role, right, based on whatever your qualifications are from a experience standpoint or skill set, or just a knowledge-based standpoint, or what your personal interests are, right? I need to go back and highlight that as well. We talked in the beginning about why you're interested in the role, right? Why you're personally driven, what you're excited about. So as well as that, I think tying it into why this particular opportunity or company would make sense based on your particular personal, interest or attributes. And then a closing. Negotiating job offers. Now this is the most exciting part, right? You got an offer, so congrats. And I know that after this entire process, right, this long strategy, you finally gotten to the end. Some of us just say, let me just take it as it is. I put a stat, only 38% of new graduates will negotiate with their employers when they get their first job offer, right? We're just excited. I'm thankful to take on the job. And most employers, I will tell you, actually expect you to negotiate salaries. So they build that in. And what does that mean? The offer that you have is probably not the maximum offer. Now that is not always the case, right? So I now we're going to go into negotiating, but there's definitely research behind this. But that's not always the case. But you want to just make sure, especially now, there's a ton of information to have job, not information, but there is a legal law requirement for a lot of states to now post the salaries. Have you any of you seen that? When you're applying to a job in certain states, they actually require to post what the role pays. So that's an easier way, I think, now than years in the past where we probably didn't have any insight into what a role would be paying. But yeah, when you get a role or an internship, I know some of you, and I'm going to say, look, I'm torn, right? You want to be inclined to say, I accept, but it's always great and thoughtful to say, this is great. I really appreciate this opportunity. I just want to take a moment to read through my offer, my contract, and follow up with you, right? And then always ask if there's a timeline, to get back with your decision. It's important, right? The role that you take on. You're getting into this position, you're going to be committed to an opportunity for a period of time. So you really want to make sure that not just from a role standpoint, it makes sense, but an economic standpoint, right? Money, it makes sense as well. When you do take on offers, and this is more for full-time offers, we have to look at a huge package. It's not just an hourly wage, right? Or some sort of weekly, compensation, right? There's so many benefits that come with full-time offers. And that will be, they'll have some retirement plans, they'll have insurance benefits. So those are also, certain components of an offer that if you're not familiar with, you can lean on individuals within your network or your parents, right, to help walk you through what the offer looks like holistically. If you're still interviewing with other organizations, you can sometimes contact them and let you know you received an offer, right? Sometimes your first offer is not always your top choice. All right. So it's okay that as a common courtesy to say, I really appreciate where I am in the process at this moment, but I did want to update you that I've received an offer from another organization, and whether or not that's your first choice or not, right? You can kind of skew your outreach message to them. And then once you accept the position, it is common courtesy for you to contact any other organizations and basically give them an update, right? They're working really hard on your candidacy, so at least they can know, okay, is this someone that we should still keep in our pipeline or not? So on the research, right? So you want to negotiate an offer, right? But you just don't do it off of impulse, right? You've actually got specific data and information on this. So there's a couple of ways you can do this. I always say talk with your career counselor, right? They have different access to database applications. So the NACE, they have a lot of employer surveys that come in. They're able to gather what those compensations look like and what a salary range would be for someone in different similar positions. There's online sites, salary.com, Glassdoor, and as well as I mentioned, there are, if you scour through LinkedIn or different job sites, there are a couple of states now where they are mandated to post what the role offers, what it pays, and there's a range there that you can use to at least give you some sort of understanding of what you should expect to get paid in a particular position. And now it's not always cut and dry, so that's why I always say really leverage some of the resources that you have. The same role in a small to mid-sized company versus some large multinational organization may pay differently only because of the size and scale of the company. Similarly, an accounting role in a particular industry may pay a little bit differently than accounting role in another industry, right? So it's not always that cut and dry. So, I just really emphasize when having these conversations, because they are sensitive conversations, right? When you do approach an offer negotiation, if you truly have done research and it's not in line, right, you do want to have some of that data to back it up, and it's not just sort of an impulse reaction of, oh, why is that lower? I thought it would pay more, right, or something. And at the end of the day, we always emphasize that you do want to get paid appropriately and competitively for the role that you're doing, but we also do recognize and appreciate the opportunity in getting a role, and where there's also benefits in being able to learn, right, grow with a certain company, and so that may offset some of the expectations you have from a compensation expectation perspective. So I've gone over a ton. I know that this presentation was, entitled sort of a roadmap. So this is a 5-step process, just kind of, putting out everything that I mentioned together and slicing it into a few different steps, right? Assessing yourself, doing that research, developing your strategy, develop your network, targeting organizations, preparing for an interview. This is also another roadmap that we can share with you after, so it can help you as well with the economics department has put this together, and meeting with a career counselor and kind of walking you through, preparing for your search, searching the open job market, the hidden job market, as well, applying, interviewing. And one thing I didn't say, hidden job market, that also, as you look at roles that are out there and you're applying directly, right, there are also opportunities that I've seen that I'll hire a candidate because they were introduced to me or they network with me, and I found that they had a really good skill set for a company. And in the back of my mind, I said, you know what, I can actually create a role for this person. Or, I feel like if we're going to promote XY, John next year, Albert can probably come in and take his role. Let's keep in touch with him, right? So it's this is always, it's not over a sprint to get to a role. I maintaining those relationships and networking, it may not pan out to an offer today, but a lot of times I think about candidates I've met and I'm like, wow, I actually now have a position, for Liao. Let me call him up and hire him. I'll tell the recruiter, pull up his resume. Let's bring him back for another interview, right? So I just want you to know that it's not always that, hey, I'm done with the company if I don't get an initial offer. If you're passionate about that company, it's a place that you really can see yourself thriving and working, continue to network, right? You may be able to get an opportunity next year or the year after that when something else more suitable opens up. And lastly, my advice is celebrate every small win along the way. And what I mean by that, if you have completed your resume and you feel really great about it and upload it into a system, that's a small win, right? If you've gotten an informational interview and someone's responded to your LinkedIn outreach email, or an alumni has followed up with you, it's a small win, right? So any valuable connection you make, celebrate your achievements. Searching for a job, as I said, it's pretty challenging, especially over the last couple of years, right? Admittedly, the markets have shifted. it's not just that cut and dry. There's a lot of talent out there. So just really, really learn how to navigate this, and really every obstacle that you have is also a learning opportunity in a job search process. Okay. Wow, I felt like that went fast. Hopefully I didn't bore you guys. That went very quickly on my end. But we do have time for questions. So I don't know if we want to go around the room really quickly, and just, I really would encourage you, right? This is practice. If we can give a quick question or a quick comment, right? So I'll start with John. I haven't, I know you got in there a little late, but if you have any question or comment just about this job search process, or, you wanted to share with the group.
Okay. So I guess I have kind of a question about like my past job experience. So I, worked a little bit at a grocery store, over a couple summers, and I'm just wondering how important adding something like that to your resume would be versus just like the main thing, which is that I graduated from UVA, or if I I transferred from Nova, so would I include my associate's degree in my resume and like highlight that as well as my degree from UVA, or just really highlight?
Yeah, these are all part of your journey and your experiences, right? You never know who someone may know at the school that you previously attended, or what type of conversation that can spark, right? So I always say, especially at this stage, and also on the work experience, right? Whatever job that you take on, right? Even if I had someone that they were a dog walker, right? And she's like, look, I had multiple customers, created a system to efficiently, schedule everyone's time, right? I was able to create a price list and market it. And, I was competitive to 3 other dog walkers in my neighborhood, right? So whatever you do and you take on, right? I would say, even at this stage in your career, it's not just a paycheck. Like, look for any way that you can, highlight some sort of skill or qualification that you've been able to learn or enhance doing that role. So Kendall, I don't know if you had any questions or comment.
I guess I was wondering more for looking ahead in the future. How does the whole job application and research process change once you already have your first job?
So when I would say a lot of, for junior talent coming directly out of school, right? You're going to go on to a lot of the same boards. The only difference is some internship boards, right? Will change. But you'll go into a lot of the same boards. You just have to, as I mentioned, try to be extremely targeted to the opportunity that you're applying to, because the challenge is, right, the more experienced you are in your career, it's easier to decipher the appropriate talent, because now you have a longer tenure of experience. Now, the more junior you are in your career, right, there's going to be a lot more weight on potential to do really well versus me expecting you to have all of this type of experience, right, to come into the role. So I would say that you just really have to kind of proactively educate whoever, this company that you're applying to, like in a resume, in a cover letter, proactively educate them that I know I'm a fit for this role because I've done my research, or I know someone in this type of role. I have, even though I don't have the experience, it fits, this is very much in line with what I've studied in school, projects I've done, things like that. So, it's really, you don't want to be too general, right? And submitting these things, really being thoughtful. And I say the word intentional about what you're applying to, where you're applying, and why you're applying. I know we spoke to some others before. I don't know, Samantha, if you have any question, or I think you did, right? Did it come through the chat?
Yeah, her question is in the chat. She may be in a place where she's not able to.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you
Yeah.
see it, or I can read it aloud to you?
How might you suggest reaching back out to former employers to say, yep. Look, so I would, I get what your position is, right? Oh, I don't want to reach back out. They may be really busy. But you do always want to no, look, I'm really appreciative of the time that we spent when we met. It was really influential, or, it was extremely beneficial to understand and learn about your position. Everyone wants to hear something a little nice about what they did or themselves, right? Or tie something back really important to what they mentioned, not just like, hi, I was wondering, do you know if that job is still hiring? Like, right? Like you really just want to have that. It's like any relationship. You meet someone and you reach back out and say, look, I'm so appreciative of, those gems you provided when we met at this event, or I'm so appreciative of the opportunity to learn more about your role and the company. It'd be great, when your schedule permits, if we could have a follow-up call. I'm actually actively applying to a role in the company, or I've just recently applied to a role in the company. Or you could always, as I say, if, or point me in the right direction, right? So sometimes if you are aware that maybe this person truly is like super busy, you really do want to meet with them, you could always offer them that other option to say, I really look forward to opportunity to talk to you, or if, please advise if there might be someone else in your network that could assist me, or, could provide some guidance on the next stage of my candidacy, or, how to proceed, something of that nature. But yeah, we never want to be too pushy when you talk, you start out just very lightly and, complimentary and appreciative, first and foremost, before you even get into your ask of what you need from them or you hope to receive from them. Okay, I think, does anyone else have any, I don't want to just call on anyone. Does anyone else have any other questions? Is reaching back out a process? So, and you mean, John, just after you apply, right? So you've applied and what, you haven't heard back or something from the case, so you want to know. So this is always, I will say, I always encourage a follow-up email. But what I also want to manage expectations of is that if you don't always receive feedback or follow up, right? This is happening a lot more, especially as there's a lot more candidates that are out there applying to roles, and they'll just get an automatic rejection from a system, right? And if there's minimum feedback, there's a lot of reasons why recruiters, can't be as, just kind of more personable in their responses, right, to reply to you. But I would say, reach back out once, right, or after, like if you haven't heard back. But you can always just check the online posting. Is the posting even still there? Right, sometimes it's down, sometimes the role's already filled. And applicant tracking systems, if they're utilized efficiently, I know you create a login to a certain company and you submit your application. A lot of times it is designed for you to go back in there and you can kind of see where your application sits, right? So, in a perfect world, really thorough applicant tracking system, you could say like moved or under consideration, right? And if you are dispositioned, no longer, you'll get that automatic rejection, for an opportunity. But don't take it personally these days. I know a lot of folks are like, what did I do wrong? Right? This is a learning process. We would be hopeful to have that personable feedback to come back specifically. And you can always ask for that. If you have a particular recruiter, oh, great, I recently, received a email notifying me that the position has been filled. It was really great to meet with the company. While I am disappointed, it'd be great, it'd be very helpful to understand what was the deciding factors in the decision, right, to ultimately go in a different direction, right, or so something of that sort. And I think sometimes it could be helpful, right, because not everyone always takes a time out, but really just to try to understand, as I continue just to develop and pursue these types of opportunities, it'd be great, right, just for my own development, something of the sort, right? But really trying to understand what was ultimately the deciding factors, so I can keep that at top of mind, when taking on new courses or, learning this skill set, something of the sort. Yeah. And feedback
Actually, I
is always
have a question.
important with everything.
Sorry.
Yeah, Leo, go ahead.
So my question is, since I'm a second year, and would you recommend putting some of my experiences from the last year of my high school in the resume, or does it count as something valuable or not?
I would say anything that can highlight certain attributes, right, or skills or qualifications makes sense. You know, you're junior in your job search, right? So, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to say, oh, in the fourth grade, you know, I was like president of my library book club, but you know, if it's something I would say relevant, like just high school, right? Just certainly you could put on there a certain type of club, you know, certain type of like hobby, maybe you're a coach, a captain, something of that sort. It definitely is beneficial and kind of speaks to it. But you, as much as you can, maximize what you're doing now, right? You know, so different organizations that you're doing, you know, at UVA, or different volunteer, you know, projects you're doing at UVA, you know, that's going to be, I think, much more influential, but it doesn't discount, right, something that you know, you've done probably before you got to college. Just keep that timeline in mind, right? Like I would say, like, you know, junior, senior year of high school, maybe something, but like, don't go back. Oh, when I was a freshman in high school, you know, this is what I've done. That's my thought on it. Okay, and just agree. Okay, got it. Exactly, last 2 years. Yeah, and as she mentioned, some career advisors have other responses, but I say if it is something that is truly relevant to an opportunity, right? You know, whether it's some sort of connection with the type of company, the type of business, right? The type of individual, something, right? It's going to help to differentiate your candidacy, and something that I don't know. So proactively provide relevant information that will help to qualify your candidacy where it makes sense. You don't want to just add fluff to have it, right? Like, I do a lot of stuff, like I do a lot of things. I'm into a lot of different, like, right? We really want to make sure that we're a bit more intentional. Now, when you do generalist information, of course, right? If there's a certain honor, it doesn't have to, or some certain award, it doesn't have to directly be related to that company, right? You always want to highlight those things, but anything sort of extracurricular, certain type of projects, even, you want to just make sure you're being thoughtful about what you're adding, and not just have a long laundry list of things that you're doing. And then John, it is worth trying. I think so, right? So look, it's one semester. If there's some sort of volunteer project, something that you can do, right? Some sort of event that you can participate in helping to plan, right? Like I would just think definitely do some due diligence and try to figure out if there's something. And then you say, but like, look, you also say of managing you said 4,000 classes, my current 4,000 classes in a job search. Is that a typo? Do you have 4,000 classes?
The 4,000 level classes, like the more major.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah, sorry.
It's a balance, right? You have to know yourself. I don't want you to sacrifice, right, your primary responsibilities, right, and your grades or any of that. Like, if you have the ability and the time to do it, don't just scurry at the end because you feel you have to do this, right? When you sort of have some of these primary focus and responsibilities in front of you, for sure. Yeah, and then anything to highlight, a skill, right? Highlight your skills. I'll say people, they love collaborative, individuals, teamwork, something proactive, leadership, right? Showing that you've been, organized, thoughtful, manage, something. These are all really, there's a laundry list of some of these qualifications you can find, online, that just mentioned sort of like what we're looking for. And even a lot of the job applications themselves will list like, what the qualifications would look like, and you can tag that in, tie it into your resume, right? So do not just look at a job description, also be looking to the qualifications and what they're looking for, because sometimes even if you don't have the experience, you can tie in a lot of those qualifications to what you've done. Okay, all right. Does anyone else have others that I think my LinkedIn is here, so I encourage everyone, please send me a LinkedIn invite. And there's so many resources there online, but if you want to shoot me a message, as I mentioned, I've recruited specifically in financial services, but I recruited for all functional areas. So what that means is that within financial services, I've recruited from everyone from operations to legal to technology, engineering, sales, marketing, front office investments. I've the entire gamut. So I can and a lot of those times I'm leveraging candidates from other industries, even if they're not in financial services. So I think I have a, sort of a good, pretty broad scope of, what these types of organizations look for, because I've spoke for candidates that come from different organizations or have moved to different organizations. I mean, even in the medical field, I've dabbled as well, because I have a ton of recruiter friends who are senior HR recruiters or HR leaders or recruiters for the medical field as well. So it doesn't hurt to ask. Or I know someone. I have, I think, over 7,000 connections on my LinkedIn.
Oh my gosh, that is
Yes.
super connector.
Yes.
I don't know how many I have, but whatever it is, it's not that many, but I've had people say to me, you have so many connections.
Yeah.
7,000. Wow. You are a super connector.
I've had to interview so many candidates, right? In 2 decades of interviewing.
Right.
So they always connect with me afterwards.
Right. No, it's fantastic. You offered you have experience broad and deep. So we've been really lucky, Tiffany, to have you on this call and share your tips, your recruiting tips, job search tips. And I mean, I really appreciated also some of the language that you suggested our students use through correspondences. I mean, that, granular is incredibly helpful. I want everyone here just to please thank Tiffany, whether it's actually clapping your hands, virtually clapping them, thumbs up, but thank you so much for being here. The Eco will follow up with all of you with resources in the next 48 to 72 hours, but you're welcome to send me questions if you'd like. And then Tiffany's LinkedIn is posted here.
Yes. Thank you
Thank
all. All right. Look forward to connecting and best of luck in your search. All right.
Bye,
Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Bye.
Bye, John.